It's spooky season again, everybody. And what better way to celebrate this nostalgic time of year than by talking about childhood, or more specifically, things we remember scaring us as children. I'm pretty sure we have a few things from our childhood, whether it be a movie, TV episode, video game, etc., that scared the tar out of us at some point. With many other people over the years making videos about this, I figured, why not make my own? It could be fun though, it could be. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this haunting trip through memory lane. Now, on most of these lists and videos, you'll usually see at least one example that originated from a video game. One very common source is a little game called Super Mario 64. Now, I'm a 2000s kid, so I didn't grow up on the original Nintendo 64 version. I did, however, grow up on the Nintendo DS port, and man, I played the heck out of this game. Now, I know what you're thinking, oh, it's the piano, that's what freaked you out so badly as a kid. Now, here's the thing. I didn't know about this level until I found out about it on the Mario Wiki, so at least I was warned in advance. What I wasn't warned about was that freaking eel! Oh my gosh, I hated this thing as a kid. Anytime I would swim near it and it would lunge out at me, I would pause the game, return to the castle, and give my heart a minute to slow back down. I even had to come up with a strategy involving Wario the Metal Cap, where I would sink down to the bottom and not have to see the eel's scary face and still be able to get its star. Like seriously, what is it with Nintendo and putting these terrifying eels in these colorful, kid-friendly Mario games? Thank my lucky star, I was not a kid when Mario Odyssey came out. Otherwise, I probably would have had a fatal heart attack upon seeing these things. In general, I hate eels. They're like snakes underwater with broken glass for teeth. Sharks? No problem. Eels? No, they can all die! And this game is what started it for me. I do also remember this game, Mario Kart DS, and New Super Mario Bros. DS, also having some scary music playing during the castle levels. And during my first couple times playing them, I would do these levels with the volume turned off. On the subject of creepy game music, a few years later when I was about 11 years old, I stumbled across the soundtrack for the US version of Sonic CD, and man, it is creepy. Along with that, creepy Easter egg.
Stop playing that music!
Also, when I was about 7 years old, I do remember briefly having a small fear of whales, mainly due to a lot of stuff I watched involving whales eating people whole, such as Finding Nemo, Jonah, Pinocchio, that one time with Patchy the Pirate, and even an episode of Wonder Pets that also had a pretty scary Flash game to go with it. There were also some SpongeBob video games that creeped me out as a kid. For starters, one of my first Wii games I got was SpongeBob SquarePants Blobs of Doom. In this game, many Nicktoons, but not Fairly Odd Parents, are being attacked by orange gooey aliens. The general tone and atmosphere is like a cheesy sci-fi movie, but the loading screens were creepy, with a silhouette of a monster occasionally being lit up by lightning, revealing its intimidating face. This scared me so much as a 7-year-old that I took the game out, erased its data, and did not play it again for months. Another one was a PC game called 90 Nightmares. The whole music and atmosphere was creepy, and when I started up a minigame, I was greeted by this image. It scared me so much that I instantly stopped playing and told my mom to return it. I was kind of a pansy back then. One of the earliest things I remember scaring me from movies was not even a part of them, but rather concept art and deleted scenes. Once I discovered how DVD remotes worked, I would watch these all the time. Yeah, I was that kid. One of my first memories of these was when I was 4. I loved Disney's Peter Pan at the time, and my babysitter had a VHS of this movie. I swear I'm not that old. And I kept wanting to watch it. And as luck would have it, the DVD was being released around that same time, and my parents had to get it for me. Now, both the tape and DVD had this making of bonus feature, probably the first I'd ever seen. It had plenty of behind-the-scenes facts and footage, such as performances, voices, and even a deleted song. Now, these parts didn't really scare me that much.
Oh my goodness!
Until we reached the deleted scenes and concept art.
This is your last chance, Tiger Lily!
Now, in the movie, Captain Hook isn't really that scary. He's intimidating sometimes, but also quite entertaining, especially when he cowers in fear at the sound of the crocodile. Now, his concept art, on the other hand... Oh boy. Look at this! Look at his face! He's like, hey kids, you want some candy? This had me hate dark areas for a bit as a kid, mainly because it kept reminding me of all these creepy little images. And when rewatching these behind the scenes videos, sometimes I would hide my face when these images are about to show up. But at the same time, I remained weirdly fascinated with them. I just couldn't keep my eyes off of them sometimes. Oh, and let me tell you, that didn't even stop at this movie. Let's take a minute to talk about a little childhood classic of mine. I loved cars as a kid, and as you can see, nothing has changed. The scary part, again, wasn't the movie itself, but rather a bonus feature. Now, there was the Ghostlight short, but that wasn't really scary. The scary part was this little deleted scene entitled Lost. In it, lightning ends up in what is essentially a graveyard of abandoned, rusted, rotting away cars. Now, you're probably thinking,
oh, this is Cars. What's so scary about it?
Well, there's this face, these terrifying faces, the music, and the fact that, again, this is essentially a forest full of rotting corpses. One of which even screams at him. Holy shoot. Same as with Peter Pan, I would often hide when these scary faces showed up. Not only for this lead scene, but also part of this other one. There were other DVDs with scary concept art and deleted scenes, such as Toy Story,
Hey Woody, you don't glow!
the Scooby-Doo movie, Alice in Wonderland, Brother Bear, and even the Jonah movie. Also, side note, if you never had a moment in your life where you were scared by the THX logo, you are lying in front of everybody. When I was about 6, I got into superheroes for a bit, and had this DVD for The Batman. No, not the animated series from the 90s, but this one from the 2000s. It was pretty cool, aside from one problem. There was this episode where this villain gets set ablaze and gains fire powers, complete with his voice change and becoming pretty scary sounding. This made me too scared to even finish the episode, and for quite a while became one of the reasons why I stopped watching superhero cartoons for a bit. They were cool, but the villains were pretty darn scary for a little 6-year-old. It wasn't until 4th grade when I decided to watch this again, and when I did, I realized, whoa, hello, this is the coolest thing ever! On the subject of superhero villains, there was one show I would watch the heck out of as a kid, VeggieTales. Ah yes, the show that made Sunday school awesome as a kid. I had stacks of DVDs of the show as a kid, and my favorite episodes were the Larry Boy ones. Heck, I even had the GBA game for crying out loud. Yes, this is a thing that happened. The first of these episodes was entitled Larry Boy and the Fib from Outer Space. In this one, Junior breaks a plate, and this little alien convinces him to lie about it. And when he does lie, instead of his nose growing, his new alien friend does. Once he has lied several times, the alien is now a giant monster and goes on a rampage, and even tries to eat Larry Boy. This episode did scare me a little bit upon first watch as a 4 or 5-year-old, but that did not stop it from becoming one of my all-time favorite episodes back then. And hey, it made me not want to lie as a kid, so mission accomplished. Now on to another childhood classic of mine. This was the other show I had stacks of DVDs of growing up. In my early years, Thomas was everywhere, and my parents' wallets will tell you no different. I had the DVDs, the toys, I went to a day out with Thomas, the whole shebang. Now, this was long before the show was toned down and eventually turned into whatever the heck this thing is. So, the show used to have quite a few scary moments. There was James being stung by a bee, the spooky, scary scrapyards,
The ghost whistle.
Cranky being knocked over, ghost stories, and a few other moments here and there. The 2 darkest episodes I remember were found on the same DVD I rented once. I was about 6 when I borrowed this from a library, but had I been 3 or 4, I probably would have been scarred for life. The episodes were titled Duncan Gets Spooked and Stepney Gets Lost. In Duncan Gets Spooked, we are told and shown a story about an engine trying to make its way home by crossing a bridge, before suddenly, the engine somehow loses control and falls to its demise. That's right, we just saw a sentient locomotive die. Stepney Gets Lost focuses on this little guy, named Stepney, predictably getting lost, because that's what happens when you trust Apple Maps. he ends up in the scrapyards, which is essentially the railroad equivalent of the slaughterhouse. Two scary diesels show up and push him into a room with a giant claw that is set to destroy him. Throughout this scene, there is no music, barely any dialogue, and to top it all off, the room is illuminated by nothing but this hellish red glow, and Stepney is stuck with nowhere to go. Thankfully, he gets saved last minute, and Stepney gets to go home. Quite the gutsy move to have something this scary and dark in a children's show. Nowadays, the scariest thing about Thomas is what it has become. The greatest trick the devil ever played was convincing the world he doesn't exist. Disney World, the happiest place on earth, until you get the bill. I have been there many times throughout the years, and no matter how old or how young I am, I end up having a good time. Heck, I'm an adult now, and you bet your butt I will knock every child out of my way just to be first in line for Space Mountain. Despite all this, there were still some rides and attractions that scared me quite a bit as a kid, such as Snow White's Scary Adventures, RIP, and mostly the 4D shows as a youngin'. As an older kid, these were pretty fun, but as a little tot, these things were loud and pretty overwhelming, and I hated loud things as a kid. Two of these were Mickey's PhilharMagic and It's Tough to Be a Bug, the latter of which still scares a lot of kids and even adults to this day. In case you didn't know, It's Tough to Be a Bug is a 4D attraction inside of a large tree. You wear these glasses with Groucho Marx's eyebrows, and all heck breaks loose. There's large spiders throwing quills at you, a termite spraying people with acid, and a stink bug farting in your face. But none of that compares to the scariest creature this ride has in store, Kevin Spacey.
In Bug Farm.
And Hopper is just like how he is in the movie. Big, mean, and scary. After breaking in, he unleashes a swarm of hornets that sting your seats. I always lean forward during this part and listen to everybody else's screams of agony. And on top of it all, the entire show was as loud as all get out. It scared me to tears when I was about 4, but nowadays, I have quite the fascination with this attraction. I kind of enjoy it. And while this attraction doesn't put me on edge anymore, there is still one Disney attraction that still has this honor, the Tower of Terror. Look, I can ride Fury 325 multiple times in a row at Carowinds, but still enter my flight or fight mode on this ride. I just hate drop rides in general, okay? I'm not scared of heights, I am scared of falling from them. Last but not least, let's discuss the scariest thing ever. Books. In first grade, for some reason, we would read The Sneaky Cheese Man a lot. Looking back, the book is surprisingly very clever, but back in the day, and even as an adult, the art style creeped me out. Look at that cow, okay? That's not right. Now, here's one thing that will sound really stupid, but as a kid at one point, I remember being scared by Fox and Socks. The story itself was not scary. It was the warnings. Since it is a tongue-twister book, you would open up the book and there'd be warnings reading, "Careful, this book is dangerous." I was up late one night reading this book all by myself, and I got so freaked out, I rushed the book to where my mom was. I actually thought the book was going to self-destruct or something. I know. That wasn't very scary, but this last one is pretty scary for me, even as an adult. I know everything so far has been pretty lighthearted, but this does contain some blood and graphic pictures, so heads up. Anyways, here we go. As you can tell, I like sharks. They're interesting animals. They're really cool and highly misunderstood. I was the shark kid growing up. I had a lot of shark books, and you bet your butt I would bring at least one new one home every year from the book fair. When I was in 4th grade, I got this book called Sharks and Other Creatures of the Deep for Christmas. It's a pretty cool book. I still have it to this day, but the illustrations were pretty brutal and scary. For starters, eels. All my homies ate eels. And look at these. Cruel reminder of the harsh, brutal nature of, well, nature. They even kill a dog, like, come on, that's traumatizing. One of the worst ones is this headless eel biting at a man's arm like that one scene in Princess Mononoke. This should not be physically possible. And there's my list of things I remember scaring me as a kid. While these things were pretty scary as a kid, looking back, it's funny how most of these were not really a big deal, while others still managed to be pretty chilling. Fear is something that's just a part of life. No matter how big or how small you are, there will always be something that will make us feel afraid or scared at some point. And I hope you all have a happy and safe Halloween.
Check you later.